This week on Sprague Woodturning, I'm going to show you how to safely cut walnut shells for casting. I'm going to use some beautiful maple burl, a new color from Designer epoxy, a little bit of hollowing to make one of the most interesting hollow forms I think I've made to date. What we have here are black walnuts, and they still have the meat inside of them. And if you remember, I did a vase not too long ago called the, let me see, what was that called? The black walnut shell squirrel vase. That's what it was called. And I used some purple and green, and I was really hoping that we'd be able to make kind of stained glass windows with these. But the original ones, the shells that were sent to me from John, the squirrels, of course, ate them up. So it was pretty hard to do that. So that's why I've got these. What I want to do with these is split these down the center, and we're going to have to play that by ear as well, because I need to be able to remove all of the meat from the shell, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that like this or if it's sawed like this. I believe like this. We'll have two halves and they'll look more like faces, so that's why I want to cut them like this. First things first, this is what I made. Very simple device. This is just a couple of pieces of pine, and put a hinge on the back side of it. And I've already got one of these shells mounted in here, and when this closes, it sandwiches them. So it's pretty tight and it shouldn't spin. So I want to cut these on the bandsaw. So this is an 1.25 inch hole. I use a Forstner bit for that. But very simple construction, and anybody can make one of these to do this safely. Let's go to the bandsaw. I think that that's going to work out pretty fine. Pretty creepy looking face, isn't it? I'll take some compressed air and see if I can get out the rest, and if that's the case, then I'll do them all like this. This is the other side. If you actually maybe cut it back again, it might work better. It's kind of sealed off here. Again, you might be able to get this all out with compressed air. I don't know. I think it's going to be easy though. There, I just actually took some compressed air and blew it in each one of these, and I don't see any more of the meat in there, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut them all like this. That's a bit of a pain. I can't do this and look and see what's going on, but these are preventing this from coming back out. Cutting round stuff on the bandsaw is always a very dangerous affair, especially when things are small like this where you can't get a real good grip on it. I'm really happy with this method, other than the fact that the shell would close around the blade once you got through it. But other than that, it actually worked quite well. Never wanted a brake on my bandsaw before. I guess now it'd be nice to have one, wouldn't it? Anyway, you get the idea. I'll bring it back when I'm done here. All right, this is the not so fun part. Well, that's one. See you in an hour. All right, well, they're all cleaned out. That took probably the better part of an hour. So, what I'm going to do now, I'm a little concerned that there may still be some oil inside of these. So I want to get rid of that before we do any casting. So I'm going to throw these. This is the grate out of my toaster oven. Throw these upside down on it. I don't know, we'll cook them for 5 minutes or so and see if there's anything coming out of them. And that will help to dry them out if they're got any moisture in them too. All right, just enough room. These are the ones that didn't make it. That one spun on me. You got to be really careful. It's smaller than most of them, so when I went into the bandsaw, it just spun. And this one just kind of blew out on the side, so won't be able to use those. Okay, I'm going to put these in there for, I don't know, 5 minutes at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Yummy. Who's in for some walnut shells? Well, I don't see any oil or anything like that, so I actually put these in for 10 minutes at 350. That's what I put these in at. The one thing that I don't want to see happen is I don't want to see these shells split. So I think it's good. I think that we're probably good to cast from here. All right, you got to figure out what that's going to be though. I'll let you know here in a minute. To fill in the shells, we're going to use some art cast from Designer Epoxy. And along with that, I figured that I wanted to make the faces glow in the dark. So I decided to use the Forever Glow Midnight Purple. There it is right there. And when you're using these Forever Glow pigments, you got to mix them really strong. So yeah, there's a fair bit of pigment for a small little cup, but you need it in order to get that glow. All right, I'm going to use a syringe and fill these this way. I have no idea if this is enough. I'm going to assume that it's not. Some of those cavities are pretty deep, but I figured I would start here. I've also done my best to try and level them. That's the other thing. I really like the glow-in-the-dark pigments. This one, the purple, I thought was a better fit for the hollow form, so that's why I went with it and not nuclear green or something like that. I was just really concerned about it clashing with the red, so I just went over, filled them all up, and then went back as the levels dropped off, and actually worked out quite nicely. All right, that's it. I'm going to throw these in the pressure pot, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. In these next two clips, you'll see me churn up a couple of maple burls, and again, this is stock that I pulled from my drying shed. Been kicking around for a number of years, but the chatoyance in this burl is second to none that we've seen on the channel here so far. So I was really kind of looking for a base piece, and this one, the profile fit, so that's why I decided to make this the base. And then the other one is going to be the top piece. And of course, got to clean off all the bark surface before I can do any casting as well. Once the bark was removed, I used 60 grit to cut back the majority of it. And then I finished it off with 180. I didn't see the need to go any higher than that since this is going to be cast in resin. I think 180 will give you a perfect tooth. And along with that, I didn't want the base to cut any of the kitchen bags that we're going to be using, so I decided to just kind of soften the edges on the tenon. That way, when I pulled the bag tight, it didn't actually cause any leaks. Now this is going to be the top piece, so this is why I'm going through the bottom. Kind of strange to do this. From a wood turning standpoint, this is certainly a no-no. But when you're making hollow forms and you're casting two pieces together, it's perfectly fine, but it just didn't feel right when I was doing it. All right, so for the last little while, I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to mount our creepy smiley faces to the bowl here. I initially thought about taking some bucket material, and this certainly would be the easiest way to do it. Glue this in place with hot melt glue and then glue these onto the back side of it, but they're not thick enough and they'll end up pushing deep inside, and then I'm worried that we're going to turn away all this detail that we want to have in the finished hollow form. So that's not going to work. I thought about maybe trying this, but it's the same sort of deal. If these were about 1/4 of an inch deeper, then it would work. So I think what we're going to be forced to do is just use the Designer Epoxy's UV resin, and I'm going to have to glue each and every one of these all the way around the outside of this. And when that's done, we'll be able to add the top, and hopefully we'll have some sort of like a Southwest style hollow form. That's the plan. This is going to be long and painful. So here's the UV light. I'm just going to set this up, and hopefully it cures the resin quickly, and we'll be able to move on with this. The important thing is that the smiling face is sticking upwards. Something like that. I'll see you when I'm done. All right, I've been working on this for the last little while here. This is bucket material. And what I'm using this for is to stop the plastic bags. And I plan on using 2 kitchen bags on the outside and on the inside of this, and then fill the inside with rice. So we need to keep those bags from encroaching into the shell area here. So I think this will do it on the inside. And along with that, I've got some indexing marks. Unfortunately, because these are both natural edge pieces, they're not going to line up properly, but I moved this around and I figured that this is probably the best area for this to sit. Something like that. And I'm just going to tape this to keep it from moving around. I'll just put a little bit of hot glue around the edge of this, and we should be ready for the kitchen bags. If you're curious why I'm putting the tape on the bucket material, I was worried about the bucket material actually cutting the bags, so that's why I'm doing that. And the plastic bowl that I'm setting this in, I'm going to throw a bit of rice in it and then push the casting down into it. And hopefully that's going to push up on the bottom of the bag and fill in any of those places where the bucket material is sticking out. 2 bags on the inside just for safety. I just use a little bit of compressed air to push it down inside the casting. Then just a good old-fashioned funnel to help with the rice getting in there. A little bit of a pain. You'll see me trying to pack it in, but it is important to get it completely filled to the very top, because if you don't, then the resin will push in on the inside, and you'll have you have to do probably some recasting. But this method actually does work quite well, and I'm very happy to be using it. Last thing for the inside is to put a cable tie around the very top just to keep the resin out. For the outside bags, I just took the cut the base out of a container and then put a cable tie around that. And now we've got a little reservoir and pouring area. Okay, well that took a little bit of time. In the past, I would put tape all out the outside of this, but I do find that sometimes the resin has a hard time getting down inside of there. So I'm going to forego the tape right now. This cable tie that's on here is on here loosely. That way, when this goes in the pressure pot, the air that's inside of this casting will be able to escape and not blow up like a balloon. What else? I guess that's it. I should try and trim some more of this away. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Yeah, we should be able to lift up and down on this too, to hopefully allow the resin to go down. All right, anyway, once that's done, once I get enough resin in there that I think that I need, then I'll throw some tape around the outside of this to tighten this up, and then it'll go into the pressure pot. Let's mix up some resin. For this pour, we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. There was just way too much epoxy here to use the art cast, so that's why I'm using deep cast. And here's the new Blood Red. I was really wanting to use this, and I think it's a perfect combination with those creepy looking walnut shells. Well, I must say that it really does look like blood. Anyway, I imagine this is probably not going to be enough, but I guess we'll find out. Yeah, you can see here how it's all kind of pushing outward. Well, it was anyway. It's worked its way down inside of the casting. All right, I'll mix up another batch of that and I'll bring you right back. This is another 600 milliliters. That'll bring us to 1200 milliliters, or 1.2 liters. Yeah, I'm just going to tape this up now. I think there's lots of resin in there. I mean, really, as long as where the walnut shells are covered, that's really all that matters. And there's a good heavy reservoir there, so that shouldn't be an issue. But I just want to tighten it up a little bit with some tape, just to try and maybe save a little bit of resin here instead of wasting it. There, I think that that's going to be okay. I know that I've said that before. The resin, when I squeeze this like this, is right at the very top here. These are two solid pieces of burl, so they shouldn't take a whole lot of resin. I might just throw a cable tie right around the top here. There, it's right at the very top. All right, see you in 72 hours. All right, well, it has actually been 2.5 weeks since I poured this. I poured this before I did the last two roughing out videos. I got a nice new piece of melamine down here, so the other piece was kind of looking ratty looking. So anyway, I just screwed it down. I'll be able to change it out as it gets dirty in the future here. All right, let's pour the rice out of here, and hopefully we've got a good solid casting. That's not going to work. This isn't a very big opening to get this rice out of here. Well, early indications there that we're going to have to do some more resin. See if I can get this outer ring off here. Might be really tough to do though. Or do I just leave it in place and do another pour? Yeah. For the most part, the rice method actually worked really well. It's just up underneath of here, that's where the majority of that resin went to, and here for some reason, I don't know why that rice didn't keep that in there. Yeah, I'm gonna try and get this off. I don't know, we may have to put it on the lathe to do that though. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, like I probably might have to fix some holes. I wasn't really too concerned about it because I put a lot of resin in there. Those two burls absorbed a lot of resin. As you can see, that top one, it's pretty much all in grain. So I think a lot of the resin went there, but I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it ended up being. Wow. I was not expecting that. It's only really attached in that one area there. Not at all there. I'm a little surprised by this. I thought that there was actually more than enough resin in there. Let me think on it and I'll get back to you. So the new plan is to just glue on some material. You can get this at Costco. It's actually, you put it on metal shelving so that stuff doesn't fall through them. And so anyway, that's where I got that. And it's actually quite flexible, kind of rubbery. So it's good for something like this. And just put some duct tape around the very bottom just for some insurance. All right, so I've been thinking this over for some time here now, and I went ahead and did this without you. It's just 2 bags, again, filled with rice. And I think it was my first nightlight. I did kind of a Christmas tree, and I smashed up all of these different colored pieces of resin. So I was thinking I was never going to be able to match the same color resin, and of course you're going to see that witness line. So I debated on maybe using some brass shavings, some copper shavings, maybe alabaster might have been something cool as well. But in the end, I think that by using these resin pieces, that it should give us a really cool look. So that's what I'm going to do. I should mention that this is art cast mixed up. What is it here? I think it's 16 ounces of it. I'm sure that we're not going to need all of this. We're going to need all of these. I was holding on to them for a reason. There's always a reason to hold on to something. And this will certainly be more transparent than the blood red, that's for sure. But I need some volume so it'll flow. So I don't know. Get the light on there so you can see it properly. Anyway, I guess we'll find out what it looks like. Some areas around here are going to be perfect, other areas are not. I'll just take the screwdriver and prop it in here to give it some room for the resin to flow down in there. At least we'll be able to see it if it's got a void in some areas. This could be challenging. Yep. My nice new table cover. There, it looks like it's all filled in. I'm going to put as much as I can on the very top because it may push inside of the casting, but I don't know, it looks pretty good. And I'm really hoping that it gives it a more uniform look. That's really the whole idea of this. All right, what I'm going to do is just put this in the pressure pot, top it up as best I can. We'll see you tomorrow. All right, well, it is the next day and we've finally been successful. It's been painful getting there, but I think we finally get it. So let's get this rice out of here and this off and get it on the lathe. So another thing about the second pour, if I would have had more of those resin bits, then I think that that would have been a better option to put them in there loosely. But I didn't have a lot of them, and I know that I didn't have enough to totally fill the voids. So that's another reason why I did the pour the second way that I did. So at the end of the previous clip, I had a bunch of resin shatter and it cut my arm up and it cut my hand up. So that's why I am wearing a glove, for those who are curious. I know that there's a lot of people out there that think that you shouldn't wear a glove on a lathe. And if I was working on a metal lathe, I would be 100% with you. But on a wood lathe, I would sooner wear a glove than pick resin and wood fibers out of my hands. And some of you may wonder what the difference is, and probably the main thing is with metal lathes, they're gear to gear. So this lathe is run by a belt, and if I actually push the Hercules in here too hard, I could actually stall this lathe on this power setting. So there's our first kind of look at the faces and what it's going to look like, and I'm like, yeah, I think this is really cool. Really kind of wished that it had been more centered, because we end up losing some faces on one side of the hollow form. But you know, the concept I think was really cool, and I'm really happy with the outcome of this piece. So the Hercules is actually doing a very good job eating this stuff up, and this is the number 3, the largest 5/8 diameter one. I also have the smaller one too for doing more detail work, and I think I actually use that later on. But anyway, there is a link in the description to get 10% off your next order. Just use code InlayJim, and that goes along with all of my sponsors, including Designer Epoxy, sandpaper.ca, and Starbond Adhesives. Still working on exposing all of the walnut shells, and as you can see, some of them we've lost the creepy looking faces, so that's kind of a bummer. But you know, trying to get those shells perfectly centered, it's just, forget about it. It's very, very tough. If the shells were larger, like the first bunch of black walnut shells that I used, they were actually considerably larger than these, and they would have been a better fit for a project such as this. So now that the resin is cleaned off, you can definitely see that that burl absorbed a lot of that resin. So that would account for possibly where a lot of that resin went to. If the burl didn't absorb so much of that resin, then I think that we might have been able to just use some UV resin to fill in those areas. But you know, it's a live and learn moment, isn't it? I decided to turn the tenon on the very base of this. Not a huge fan of resin tenons because, trust me, I know that it's wood, but it's also the resin has really penetrated deeply into this. So trying to get a real good bite on that tenon can be an issue. This is the Phoenix that I'm using here, and I wanted to leave that collar at the very top of the form, and I wasn't real sure on the thickness. So you'll see me pull away the live center and like, oh yeah, I got lots. So then I go back to the Hercules and just define that collar area better than it was before and give it a little bit more profile. This is the one-way captive system. You can get it at oneway.ca. I've got the laser set at this right now, but I think I need to close it up a little bit. Steady rest is in place. I'm really concerned about this joint breaking here if we get a bad catch. And the other thing is having a real hard time getting a real good bite on this tenon, so that's another reason to use a steady rest. All right, so essentially we just need to make this run true on the inside and it's essentially done. So what I really wanted here was to basically cut through the backside of those shells, and then if you had a light inside, it would show through the eyes and the mouth. But in order to do that, the piece would have gotten really thin, which I'm not a huge fan of. And the other thing with that is, with the trimming of the outside of the casting, inside on one side was a lot thinner than it was on the other side. So I figured just by matching this, basically trim this up to the point that the cutter is running true on the inside, that would probably do it for us as far as hollowing is concerned. So if you recall, we still have bucket material in the inside of this. That's where that yellow is coming from. So initially I thought I'd be able to, okay, I'll just kind of turn it away. But what was happening was it was grabbing the cutter and kind of throwing the boring bar around. So I'm like, okay, this is just kind of a disaster waiting to happen. So I ended up using a little pick tool to grab it and pull it out through the opening. And then grab it with some pliers. Seemed to be the best way to do it. Took me a couple of tries to get it. And a better set of pliers. And then eventually we get it. Yay! Now that bucket material is gone, the cutter is gliding a lot nicer on the inside of this piece. I didn't show the inside of this at all. It was cut fairly clean. There was one area where I left some colored resin on the very bottom bowl piece, if you will. And that's just because I was a little concerned about it getting too thin. I did measure it, and I believe we're at about 1/4 of an inch wall thickness. A little thicker maybe in some other areas, but I was just really worried about, I've got a lot of time in this, and I didn't want it to explode. So that's how you change out the boring bars for those who are curious, and then you can move the laser setup. I actually pointed it right on the end of the teardrop cutter. That way I can see it in the base, how deep it is. That's what I was doing there, just looking over my left shoulder. It would definitely really be painful if you went through the side of this thing at this point, after all the time and money that's invested in it. So I did the very bottom and slightly up on the inside. That's pretty much the right angle bar right now. And the problem with using that one is a lot of times the laser will hit on the steady rest. So I know I keep talking about modifying it, and I definitely need to, but I've just got a lot on my plate right now. But one of these days I'll get around to it, and it really probably only needs to be cut on one side, to be quite honest with you, and straightened. That way it won't hit on the steady rest anymore, and it'll be an absolute joy to use. Last thing is to clean up the opening prior to sanding. I typically don't bother with this until it's pretty much the very last thing that I do. And that's just because when you're putting the tool inside and outside of the hollow form, there's a good chance you might mark it up. So in the next clip that I got coming up here, the volume is going to be at 20%, and you can hear how loud this is to use. So yeah, one thing that I would like to see it a little quieter than that, but you know, it didn't really cost me any money because those are just wheels off of an inline skate. Well, what do you think so far? I think it's pretty cool. I don't think that we're going to get the color in here that we want it. Mostly clear. I don't know. There seems to be a fair bit. We'll know once it's polished out. But I do have a couple small little holes to fill. There's a fairly big one there. So we're going to be using the UV resin to do that, and I'm not going to tint it. I'm just going to put it on clear and then hit it with the UV light. All right, we'll cure this up. Ooh, check that out. A little bit added bonus. I forgot that I put glow-in-the-dark stuff in those chips, in that resin. Anyway, I'll put this on here for 3 minutes and then we'll get back at it. Give this a final trimming and sand it, and then we'll do a resin pour on the inside. Now that the UV resin is set, all I'm doing right now is trimming this piece up, and I know that some people may find it strange that I don't do basically any final trimming or sanding prior to going inside of the vessel. And the reason for that is, in my mind, when you're going to lose a piece, it's going to be from hollowing. So don't waste your time finishing out the outside of the piece only when it could possibly be destroyed from within. So that's why I do it that way, and hopefully everybody understands that. And there, I'm happy with that profile. Outside, it was sanded from 60 to 800. All I did on the inside of this piece was just up in the neck area, and I left the tool finish on the inside of this piece. Again, the opening was so small that I couldn't really get anything in there to sand it anyway. I was having issues sanding down near the chuck, so that's why I switched out to the air-powered sander. Right angle is certainly a lot better that way. Now I'm just buffing out with the Triple E buffing compound from the Be All buffing system. And of course, the last step is going to be to use some denatured alcohol to clean the surface prior to any finish going on. Okay, what I have here is some Waterlux gloss, and the plan is I'm going to put a coat finish on the outside of this. I'm going to put it in the clean room for about an hour, and then I'm going to do a resin pour on the inside. I'm just going to leave this on here. What do you think of that? Those laughing faces, I think are really, really cool. I was hoping for a little bit more of those resin bits to be embedded in the resin. But you know, the funny thing is it doesn't even look like there's a witness line there at all. You've got a dark resin down below and then it's clear, and it doesn't even really show a witness line. Looks like there might be a little piece of rice embedded right there. Hopefully you can see that right there. Overall, I'm very happy. I didn't put any finish on the inside because the resin's going to leak out. Anyway, I'll bring you back in an hour when we're ready to do that pour. Okay, it's been an hour. I have 4 ounces of art cast, which will be more than enough. If at all possible, I do like to seal these hollow forms up inside and out, like, you know, on the first day. Sometimes it's not going to work for you, but I always try to. So anyway, I'm just going to move this around and dump it upside down in this little container, probably for about 10 minutes, and then that'll be it. We'll see you tomorrow for the second coat. Alright, that's it. I'm going to let this sit there, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. So it is the next day. I was having a hard time holding on to any sandpaper to try and sand the opening in there. So I remembered that I had these bent needle nose pliers. So that's what I did there. And the neck was sanded up to 500 on the inside. And then of course, before the next coat of finish goes on, buffing again with the Triple E buffing compound. I do this between every coat of finish that I put on. I know that some people are saying that they're not getting the same results that I'm getting. We'll try pushing on the buffing wheel a little bit harder to knock that finish down. And of course, cleaning up with denatured alcohol. Well, good morning. This is the second coat of Waterlux Gloss. So as you watch me put the finish on, just take note of where I stop and where I start. When I apply the finish, and you'll see it here in a second, I come up from the base, and then when I reload the rag, I don't go back to the spot that I left off at. I'll come a little forward and then work my way back. And I'll do that all the way up the piece, forward, and then work my way back. And then this way you won't have any heavy finish spots and possibly any sags and runs. There you have it. I must say, I think it's one of the cooler pieces I've made. Look at the chatoyance on that burl on the base. Wow. And the top one is called an onion burl for obvious reasons. All right, if there's a third coat, I will do it the same way, but I don't think so. It's looking pretty good. And we'll see you when we're doing the base, or the bottom. So I got the hollow form mounted on the vacuum chuck. It's pretty rare that I'm able to get it in the first try, but I did this time. And I'm just using the Hercules to clean off the very bottom here. This piece, there was no resin in the bottom, so I just sanded it from 60 to 320. And that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let's have a last little chat about this week's project. She's a beauty. I'm really glad that I did this, and hopefully you guys like it as well. Well, what do you think about this beautiful hollow form? And this just goes to show you what you can do with two beautiful burls, stick them together and make a really, really cool hollow form. I absolutely love this piece. Here is the very bottom. Still need one more coat of finish, and then it would be ready to go to its new home. And this piece is for sale. So if you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then. Try and show you inside what this looks like. For a tooled finish, it's actually pretty good. Sealed up really nicely, but the opening is just so small. Very hard to show anything. Now, I wanted to put this out in the sunlight, and of course we don't have any today. I don't know if you've been watching the news or not, but there's been lots of forest fires here in Ontario, Canada. So we're finally getting some rain today. We desperately need that. We need days of it. So I think this is one of the driest springs that I've ever seen, or early summer, that's for sure. So anyway, there's been a lot of fires. There's none around us, but there's been a lot of smoke in the air, so it'd be nice to see that go, that's for sure. I'm going to set this down before I drop. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the 3-gallon kit at 100,000. Right now, we're getting close to 95,000. It's been very, very slow. These last 2 weeks with roughing out, I know that that's not a lot of people's thing, so I get why maybe the subscriber count is down on that. But I've got another project that I think is really cool, so we're going to do that next week, and then we should be at 95,000 for sure, and then I'll do another giveaway the week after that. Let me know in the comments what you think about this week's video, and of course that thumbs up will always help with the analytics as well. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, please do that so that you can help me get to 100,000 subscribers. That would be very, very awesome. All right, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends, and we'll see you next week.